So Mishnah Gimel Sif Aleph. So the Mishnah Berurah over here begins with a very important Hakdama. And the Hakdama of the Mishnah Berurah is that there's a lot of details. Rabbi Davis, how do you translate the Peirosav? You don't want to weigh in. Okay. So he went into Machzah Shekel's psich over here. So Lamaisa, there's a lot of details, and let's see what we can do. The disclaimer is to be very cognizant that we're discussing Shehiyah and Shehiyah and Shehiyah. And then when we move on from Shehiyah, not to mistakenly think, oh, so everything that worked by Shehiyah works by Chazara and works by Nisina Lechatchila and works by everything else. We have to, again, at that point, ask the question again, does it work all the dinim the same? And Emir Tashem, we'll get there. So the first thing we have to discuss, I'll just tell you, really, in my mind, there's three big sugyas, which is, and then there's going to be a lot of, what is the Isser Shehiyah? What is the Isser Shehiyah? Why the Isser Shehiyah? And how we're misakin the Isser Shehiyah? And what is the Chumrah L'chatchila of the Isser Shehiyah? I think that really breaks down Sif Aleph. Now, if we understand properly what the Isser is and how to be metakin it, then even in cases where things are confusing, then hopefully we'll be able to make the right decision. That's I think klali. Now, things to walk away from Sif Aleph before we begin is, how do you set up your life l'chatchila? Lamaisa, whether your oven turns on or off when you open the door, whether there are sensors, but lamaisa, there's no garfikatim inside your oven, so are you allowed to keep food in your oven going into Shabbos? That is a Shehiyah Shayla. That is your number one Shehiyah Shayla that you probably will ever have, because all the other Shaylas that you hack maybe are always going to be garfikatim. And yeah, we'll get to everything. I'm just trying to open up the floor here. If you get fixated on your crack pot, but then you line it with foil, whether that works or not, we'll talk about. But at least you had some level of garvakatim. Masha Enkin, if you have an oven, which you have nothing inside your oven, and you have food in it, so maybe you have right there a Shehiyah Shayla, number one. Number two, I recently realized a massive Shehiyah Shayla is your hot water urn. Hot water urn, for those who like hot water on Shabbos, and for those who always forget to plug it in until moments before Shabbos, Kedarka B'Kodesh. There's no, maybe there is, let's see, but is there any Garvakatim? And did it get to Yatzalah? Did it get to Mechel and Tersai? How long? How much water is inside? And if it didn't, 1 second. I'm plugging my thing. I filled it up all the way so I can have my one cup of coffee. Yeah, one of those things. No. It's like part of the minhag is to spill it out Motzei Shabbos. Okay, I'm happy to see that we're all in the same boat over here. Okay, so it takes a long time to get hot. And you plug it in, and you did it right before you ran out to shul. 1 second. How hot was it? And if it wasn't, is that a case that you really were mamish over Shehiyah? Potentially? And then we have to start handling b'di'evids, what the story is. So that's another case that we have to keep in mind. And then also within it all is obviously this fascinating heter of kidei rechaisa or kids rechaisa for those Bali diktuk amongst us. That the Magen Avraham Avada, mamish minhag, every time on the way out to shul, I throw in a piece of raw meat, or like he says, that's the right thing to do. Or you throw in a raw vegetable and think you're mamish a grace at tzaddik. Let's see whether that's going to work bisman hazeh. So I think the floor is now open, and let's dive in. So step number one is, what is the Isser of Shehiyah? What is Isser Shehiyah? I'm not going to get involved in the lumdis, just particularly because I'm not holding. I'll just be brutally honest. With the Nemuki Yosef and how this works, and is this a unique isser that you have an isser on a Friday? I'm not going to really get involved in that. Maybe I'll say one line that I saw from Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg in a minute. But what is the isser? So we all learned Rashi. Rashi says, as amongst come out all the Rishayim, Shema yechate bige cholim. You might come to stoke the coals. Now, and if you stoke the coals, in the heavenly, where they write down your averis? Pingus. There you go. The heavenly pingus. Well, what do they write down? Where were you over? Your aver shem yechate. What was the isser? Was it an isser bishul, or was it an isser mavir? What was the isser? So fascinating is the Aruch HaShulchan, mamish right over here in Sif Aleph, that you can miss it just because this is Aruch. Oh, very good, very good. Zok the Hilig Aruch HaShulchan. He says, what is the isser? He says the isser is bishul. He says because you might not think. And Kirila Maher Bishulam Berega Achas Ubetavasai Lachila. Look, they're Bali Tav even back then. Karav Hadavar Shal Rega Ze Yishachach Sheshabbos Hayoim V'Yachate B'Gecholim V'Yavoy Lidei Iser Da'araisa. And Shal Yidei Chituyav Titmaher Livashel V'Hu Mivashel B'Shabbos. That's what Aruch HaShulchan learns. However, the Pri Megadim, we're slow. It's still the same slow from 90 seconds ago. It's still the same slow. We're about to get there. What does slow mean? You have a kasha. Good. You're asking the Rosh Yesiv's kasha. Very good. So the Pri Megadim comes along, in Mishlei Zav at the end of Sivkot and Aleph, and he says, that the problem is not the food, the problem is the coals. Well, you make the coals flame, says the Rosh Yesif, Teda Shem Yechate La Mishom Bishol. Who? Daha Mitztamik V'Yafaloi Im Kamech Bandersai Las Be Mishom Mevashel. That is his problem. He says there can't be an Isser Bishol. So Mamish beautifully is the Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura, as always, gets everything in Reish Nun Zayin. Reish Nun Zayin Sif Katan Aleph, which obviously in the Marmakam Yeshida was there, and you all saw the relevant Mishnah Brura's in Reish Nun Zayin. Okay, I don't know what's so funny. In Reish Nun Zayin, Sif Katan Aleph, the Mishnah Brura says, very importantly, Ein Taimnim, he says that the Chayiv Mishum Mivashel. Okay, sounds like the Aruch HaShulchan. Then he says, "Va'afilu l'man damer deinu chayim mishum mevashel, but kiven shenisbashel pamachas who's ready cooked echad mikol makom ikol lemigzar shema yechamema al gabe ha'ish v'yachata b'yicham v'yischayim mishum mavir." So Mishnah Brura, what's wrong? Reish Nun Zayin, Sivkot and Aleph. You're looking at Reish Nun Vav. It's the bottom of the page. Yeah, okay. Reish Nun Zayin. I did it also. Reish Nun Zayin, Sivkot and Aleph. The Mishnah Brura says mamish this nekuda that it's bishul, but when it's not bishul, then it's mavir. Okay, which already is going to open up our minds for us to wonder that is there a mavir issue in our Heintiga ovens? So this is already opening up our minds, meaning if you go with the Aruch HaShulchan that it's a bishul issue, and let's say your food is shlish bishula, your food is mechal ben drasai, so yeah, oven, no oven, who cares? Lamaisa, you're gonna end up coming to cook. I'm saying, let's say is there gonna be a shem yechat? Meaning, so 1 second, because if the isser is going to be to do bishul, so now you can understand how you get to there. Maybe is irrelevant. You start handling gas, yeah, gas, no. All you're doing is you're opening up the gas flow, more gas is coming in. But 1 second, if it's going to lead to a bishul, like the Aruch HaShulchan, then maybe one could say, okay, just stop getting stuck. But the fee, if it's fully cooked, and then you have an Isser Mavir, so then you have to ask, is it an Isser Mavir in our ovens? And then if it is, we have to get there. So we'll get there in one moment, how we deal with our ovens. But what I wanted to point out within the the fascinating chakira, some would call it, how does this whole thing work? Is there, meaning, what is the isser of Shehiyah? How do you have an isser on Erev Shabbos? What exactly did you do? Meaning, and the way you would precisely say over the isser, the nafkamina is Zakt Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. What if a guy creates a matzav of Shehiyah? You turned on the crack pot, and you forgot to put the cholent in the crack pot. As you're running out to shul, let's use that case. You tell the cleaner lady, just put it in. So top. It's not. You don't have to worry about bishul akum. You turned on the heat, and everything's fine. But what about Isser Shehiyah? Says Rechaim Pinchas Scheinberg, like a shum Isser b'zeh. Because there can't be an Isser if you didn't do a Maisa on Erev Shabbos. That's what Rechaim Pinchas learns. La Maisa, the Chazon Ish says the exact opposite. He says, Afilu hem in nachri or kaif, if a guy or a monkey puts the food on, chayiv lahasir, you have to remove it. And then this gets involved in the raid of, Lamaisa, do you remove it on Shabbos? Do you not remove it on Shabbos? Tali and all the lumdis. We're not going to get involved in there because there is just too much to go on. And the real reason is because I'm completely not holding, so I'm just not gonna pretend. So with that, let's move on. One more detail before we get into the real Etzem Gezira is Kasha Gvava. Kasha Gvava, which Kasha Gvava, there's no Isser Shehiyah. Why is there no Isser Shehiyah on Kasha Gvava? Seemingly because there's two ways of saying it. Why is there no Isser Shehiyah on Kasha Gvava? What would he say? All answer at once, please. Meaning, why not? Why not?
Cold, it doesn't reignite.
Oh, so he's really saying two different things. Because the moment it ends, it's over. That's one way. That's the way the Ran says it. That shemiyad kolsa shel heves kolsa gama gachelas, meaning there's nothing afterwards. That's one focus. That's the way the Ran says it. Therefore, there's no shemichata. Because what's the holy shemichata is that you can have a coal and you're going to soak the coal. But if there's no coal, all it is a flame. What's there to be mechata? That's one way to say it. The way the Rashi says it, and Rabbi Yerucham is Inoi Moisef Hevel. Now, Nafkamina might be, what if you have a ton of Kasha Gvava, and it is Moisef Hevel? Do you then come back to your Gezerah? Pashtus not, and we have to get back to this, but this is really one of the Mar Mekaimis that a tea light, some will want to say, will not have an Isser Shehiyah on it. Because there's when it's out, and there's nothing to do with the tea light. And therefore, this is always the point that we give over the Shalom Bayis tips, as we always love to do here, which is you want to keep your soup hot. Where's Nachum Dave? Where's Nachum Dave? He was nervous. You want to keep your food hot for Friday, your soup hot Friday night. You do two things. Either you do the minhag of some, which is you heat it up in Erev Shabbos, turn off the fire, you wrap it in a blanket, and then you eat it on Friday night, and you say, it usually works really, really well. It just punked this week when you're here, it didn't get so hot. That's, but mamash, it's always so hot. It's bizarre. The 1 week I served it to, I can't understand it. And that goes on, every single week. That's one minhag. Or you can invest in tea lights and you put 2 little tea lights underneath your flame and you're good to go. Now it happens to be, we'll get to everything else. Hey, there's many eitzes. But the tea light aids, so your house, you don't want your house so hot, and you don't want to waste electricity and all these other issues. So use a tea light. Happens to be in my case, you don't need a heter because the soup is fully cooked and whatever. But theoretically, if you're looking for an eitzah to something with the food, tea light might be it. Let's hold this idea. We started off and we said not everything is created equal, Shehiyah Chazar Atmana, but maybe, and we'll just put out the idea right now, if there's no Shem Yechata, so when we learn Chazara, and you already learned it from the Gemara, you already saw the Sigya in the Mishnah on the Gemara, is there any Isser Chazara on Kasha Gvava? Is there any Isser Nisina L'Chatzchila on Kasha Gvava? So we have to get to all those steps, and maybe you could have an absolute maifis that you could have your soup on top of your tea lights, and the flame is not covered, and you could take it off, and you could serve it, and maybe you could even put it back. Because maybe there's no Isser Chazara on tea lights. That's it. Good. So now you're pointing out that maybe there's a separate subset within different isurim, and we have to get to very, very good. Okay, weiter. Just because someone asked the shayla last week, what's the story with the radiator? Lamaisa, is there any isser shehiyah on a radiator? Strange people. What should I tell you? Listen, we won't call it out by name. But listen, strange people. No, I've had the very normal people, but the answer is no. There's no isser shehiyah. And it's a Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah and Sheni Hilchos. What would be the shayla? Is that it's hot? It's hot. No, let's say go any plug in wherever you want. Is there an isser shayla? Who cares? Whichever permutation you want to be. Says Mishnah Berurah. Sheni Hilchos of Katan Chaf. Ayin Mishnah Berurah de lahashes al tod ischama. He's talking about even told ischama. Ulai gam told this are, and that's going to be all these. Now, it's not really fair because we don't know what told this cham is, we don't know what told this are is, but he says that there won't be any isser. So I guess let's just hold this because we don't really know what this is talking about, and we'll get there. Now, there is the first bir halacha you all saw. I just said about a lot of kashing vava. That's the first bir halacha, right? The first bir halacha made mention that if you have harbe kash shabayir zaman rav efshir de asr lahashis. Right? That's the Bir Allah and Sefal of Tevei Maskal Afilu. Tevei Maskal Afilu. Okay, that's a Marmak. Now that we know what the Isser is, let's understand how you fix the Isser, and does Isser apply always, right? So good. So let's just, we're just going to speed up a little bit because this is all what we call, whatever. Yeah, a hot plate. A hot plate. What? Yeah, whatever. A hot plate. I won't say it out loud. A hot plate. Tachlis. New. What's the deal with a hot plate? So you all know the raid. There's two types of hot plates. Don't get confused. There's a hot plate that you could raise the heat. The hot plate you can't raise the heat. A hot plate you cannot raise the heat. So what would be the shayla? Yes. You want me to slow down? Okay, no problem. With love. With love. A hot plate, which is a plate that gets hot, and there's two types of hot plates. There's one that they sell in America, which has different heat settings, and there's one that I don't even think, do they sell one in America without any heat settings? Yeah, they do. They do. Okay, great. I just saw them sake. They have the two layered ones they just got in. Very cool. New type of platas that they stack on top of each other. Sounds dangerous to me, but listen, I guess not everyone's kids are climbing on the counter. But says Ramesha, very famously, is there an Isser Shehiyah on a hot plate? So you would all say, why not? It's hot. It's a plate. It's a heat. Don't make a mistake and say, oh, you don't see a fire. Who cares? You see a fire. Anything flaming hot, red hot is called a fire. Metal that's red hot is called a fire. It's a din of eish l'chol hadeis. So l'chayra, a hot plate should yes have an Isser Shehiyah. What would an afkamina be? Again, we always are going to have to plug in, and we could have done this whole share backwards, which means, I want to keep my soup. Let's say the soup is Mavusha called Sarkai, Misang V'Yafalai. And let's say I learned that's part of the Chumrah to be Machmer for the Mechaber. Everyone understands what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, good. Because we could do this whole show the other way, but you all know that half, so I didn't go into that half. Or let's say the food is not fully cooked, or let's say whatever the case is there an Isser Shehiyah? Then you have to plug in what the case is. So says Ramesha very, very famously in Chelik Dalid, Ayin Dalid, Bishul, Lamed Hey, Plata Chashmalit, Im, Efshalit, Bashel, Sham, Oz, Mutter, Lahamid, Kedera, Chama, Im, Ein, Sham, Ella, Mida, Achas, Lehachoim, Ve'im, Yesh, Shtei, Midois, Os. So first of all, if you could change the heat, that's not Ramesha. Good. Number two, if you cannot change the heat, then says Ramesha, is there an Isser Shehiyah? It's totally if it's able to be cooked. Im efshir lehit bashel. Now, it's true that klapi the Isser Shehiyah, and hopefully this will be the last time I'll make this disclaimer. It's true, klapi the Isser Shehiyah. These nikudas aren't so large because they don't have that much of an afkamina in our life. But when we get back to Isser Chazara, we get back to Isser Nesin L'Chatchila, these things are going to come back into play. That's what we have to know the Yisaitis. But says Ramesha, efshir lit bashel. The $1 million problem is that every single plata in the world is efshir lit bashel. It is. It's just hot. What do you want? It might take longer to cook. But that's what we call a griddle in English. What is a griddle? A griddle is a hot plate. That's just what it is. your griddle gets hotter than a hot plate, his griddle doesn't. It doesn't make a difference, but a griddle by nature has a flame underneath it. You can make it very low and you can make it very high. There's no such thing. A griddle is super hot. It depends what you do. So a hot plate, you could cook in it. You definitely could. And many a safer have said, what do you mean? Just take an egg and put it on top and it cooks. It might take an extra few minutes, but it cooks. So it definitely is efshel litzbashel. There's no shayla. However, everyone takes on one of these Torah Shabbal Pez that just everyone takes on. I don't know if it actually is sourced anywhere, but I don't know if it's sourced anywhere, but everyone takes it on. That it means it's rogel litzbashel. That's where a Moshe met. So is it normal to cook? Which you have to say. It's difficult in the words, which I tell you, it's very difficult. But that's what everyone takes on. They take on that it's is it normal to cook there, and it's definitely not normal to cook there. And therefore, many will say there's no Isser Shehiyah. We'll quote a Shevet Alevi. Shevet Alevi says, if there's one heat setting, then there's no Isser Shehiyah. Now, this is a very big deal. Remember this. Remember the Shevet Alevi. Remember this from Moshe. Very important that if there's one heat setting, the learning has a din of Grufa, Viktuma, Shmir Shabbos, says the same thing in Sif Lamed. Grufo Ktuma. Grufo Ktuma. By nature, it's called Garuf Vikatum. That's the Shevet Alevi's Lashon. Rosh Zalman, though, says what you just said. Shlomo Zalman says what you just said. Shlomo Zalman says, is Dina Kikash Ugvava. Is there a nafkamina? I do not know. I don't know. I don't know. I should never even. Neither of them you need to. Neither of them you do. So I don't really know if there is a nafkamina. Well, when we get to adjustable in a minute. Right now we're talking about there's one heat, one setting. There are paiskim, many are taking on. It has a din of garafikatum. Lemaisa, let's just say the Sada Chumra, Rav Yashiv, Chachani, Chazon Ish, all come along and they say, what sheikhs? Chazon Ish says it's a light plug. Rav Yashiv says, that it's just not the same thing. It's not kashu gvava. Isha chashmal, he's ish, bas kiyuma, shaykh, and therefore, and he is a shaykh shem yagdol b'kirayim acherois, which again, in the world of Gezeris Chazal, it's hard to say these things. Chotshani says lay plug, so you have a weighted machlekes. Yeah, whether you could cover or not, it's going to be the next shelf. Shel is this within this, or so we have a machlekes. We'll call it Ramosha or Shlomo Zalman, Shevet Alevi versus Chazon Ish, Rav Yashiv, and Rav Nissi Karelitz. Light plug. Who cares that there's one heat setting? Light plug. And it's a way to machlekes. Now, Rabbi Davis, you're absolutely correct. In cases that you could just cover, that will be the Eitzah. But in cases that maybe you can't just cover it, or other fascinating designs of technology that we're going to have nowadays, this is going to be a very important machlekes hapaiskim. Now, if you could adjust it, then kamat everyone is machmir. Kamat everyone is machmir. I don't know if I should say this, but I don't know. There's no. Everyone is machmir. Everyone is machmir. Let's just leave it at that. Everyone is machmir. Everyone is machmir. I don't know. He has a quote here. I don't really understand it, so I'm just going to leave it. This is far from that. No, whatever. Not in our camp. Doesn't make a difference. Weiter. Lamais, everyone's machmir. Which again, all that means is that you now have to deal with the shayla. You have to grufa viktuma. And again, there's always going to be in every shayla you have to go through all the levels. Now it is shaykh is Shehiyah. I'm going to fast forward to something we're not going to talk about today to just show you how this could play out. We have a coffee machine in the back of the room. This coffee machine, you could set in a timer that it could brew you coffee for Shabbos morning. So many say, hey, this is Gavaldik. Put in a timer, brews you coffee Shabbos morning. And you say, is there a problem? Machlekes b'shami b'sil. We paskin will allowed to use timers on Shabbos. So mabaya, right? Everything is fine. So there's a Chazon Ish that we're going to have to get to. How to learn the Chazon Ish is a big shayla that throws a line in that it's an Isser Shehiyah. which when we understand what Isser Shehiyah is that we're learning right now, is that you're leaving something cooking and we're afraid you're going to come to tamper with it. So Zakta Chazon Ish, if you're leaving something that is cooking, not cooking on a timer to cook, then you have to be worried with it. Okay, whatever that Chazon Ish means, we'll get to. But now, how are you going to deal with it? So now, maybe the Eitzah is, well, how many settings are there? And is it Nichlal in the first place of the Isser Shehiyah? And if it's something that can't be within the Isser of Shehiyah, then maybe the whole thing blows itself up. Meaning, if this coffee machine probably would call it has multiple settings, there are things to do. But let's say you have one of these old school machines, there's really nothing to do. It's on, off. That's all it is. There's no settings. So there, you put a timer on it, Gavaldik. It's an Isser Shehiyah. Gavaldik, let there be an Isser Shehiyah. How do you take care of an Isser Shehiyah of something with one setting? Oh, we just learned it's a Machlekes Achronim, and there are going to be those who learn there's nothing to do. Yes. That's great. Who cares? There's no Isser Shehiyah. There's no Isser Shehiyah. It doesn't make a difference. If I have a plata, I could go Erev Shabbos, take raw chicken, and leave it on top of it. You just were over Shehiyah. No, you weren't, because there's no Isser Shehiyah. Oh, we're gonna get to earn in a moment. We're gonna get to earn in a moment. We're going to earn in a moment. You know, yeah. So that's good. Let's. Okay, so let's get to that answer. You're saying a different answer. Good, maybe. In a chanam. Okay, let's move on. There's a lot of paiskish hak, we'll call it, with our gas ovens, our nichlal in the gzeira. Nichlal in the gzeira. However, they all end. Very famous Tshuva Ramesha, Chelik Aleph Siman Tzadi Gimel, which is required reading, and it definitely required skimming, at the very least. At least pretend like you learned it. Chelik Aleph Siman Tzadi Gimel, Be'ikr Divir Maskel V'hinei, which Ramesha comes, but again, just to go to the end, the Mishnah Halachos or Menashe Klein has all tshuva. Everyone ends off. You can't be seimich on their svaros lahatir. Ramesha comes along, and Ramesha says that maybe there's no shami because only in something that you could be mechata, something that you can't be mechata, just raising and lowering, opening the gas is not called shami. He handles. But what do you mean? It's just called adding in more fuel. So is that called shami? When you raise the gas, you're adding in more fuel. He says, wait, by kasha gvava, we said there's no isser, right? You could just add in more kasha gvava. So why is it in Echel on the isser? Zakra Maisha, because kasha gvava is hard to get. Says Ramesha. So you're telling me probably, he says, I would assume that people kept a pile of kasha and gvava next to their oven, because if not, it would be pretty hard to cook. And yet we see that there's no gzeira. Imkain b'tanuri agashu davar kal of teach yeser as nikve asinur lavi yeser gaz yish leikzar. So maybe there should be gzeira. He goes back and forth. Forgot mistavish oilam hayir regila. She eats in the kash, like I just said, right next to the oven. But lamaisa, he ends off, as does everyone, that these are not svaras that one can be makel on their own. They're good ideas to know, as we'll get to in a few moments, that they do quote, maybe we'll say right now, they quote from Rav Felder in Lakewood that he wants to say that if you put all the different svaras together, maybe in certain scenarios he's willing to be makel. That's and this is why when we get to that maybe this is not called shemi yechata, correct? So now when we're gonna have to get to the $1 million shayla, can I keep food in my oven cooking into Shabbos? And then we're gonna have to discuss. Okay, so if Chananya, it's mutter. But if the Chachamim, you should be machmer. And the Magen Avraham in the Mishnah tells us you should be machmer like the Chachamim. So why am I getting faces looked at me? Well, so 1 second. So Ramesha says it might not be the Shehiyah, but he ends up to be machmer. Good. So what relevance is this? Is that we're going to have an entity called an oven that you're not going to be able to do gar for katam because you just can't. And you want to know, the box guys that everyone learned in Rabbi Riviet's book, there's some nostalgic thing called a box blech that doesn't exist. Okay, Givaldik, go buy one in your local pawn shop, whatever it's called. So now comes along Ramesha, comes along, so there's farm that, so now, Lamaisa, can we keep food cooking into our oven? Okay, so we have a problem. Maker Adin, of course, it's mutter. Cause it's Mechel Ben Zersai. It's a shlish bishulei. It's chash bishulei. Givaldik. However, who doesn't? You want to live your whole life on a? It's not, I don't know if the word is b'diavad, but it's not a lechatchila. The lechatchila is to be machmer v'shitas chachamim in the machaber. So what does that chumrah look like? What's that chumrah look like? So I'll just tell you the two stadim. It looks like of v'shkol tzarkai. Now the shaila is, do you also need mitzdamek viraloi? Because if it's mevushkal tzarkai or and it's still mitzdamek v'yafaloi, chayr it's still being nichlal in the gzeira. L'chayra. We'll get to this in a little bit, hopefully. So some Rafelder comes along and he says, "Royis in a sefer called Halacha Shalema Chelik Beis Soif Simin Zayin." He says, "Shamati from Rafelder Vigam Megoyin Echad." Don't know what that is, but must be big. Because Makoim Roy Litzarif Svara Hazais Al Kopanim Shaloi Nitztorich Lahachmer Yoiser Miminaga Kadmoin Lahakil Mechatzi Bishel. That he's willing to put together all the svaras about an oven to say, you want to know, Mikra din it's mutter, you're being chayshish for the other shita as a chumrah, that far you don't have to go. So that's already one reason that we'll to know these svaras. But in reality, it's illegal to say these svaras, as they quote from Ray Berkowitz. He says, even b'diavad, these svaras don't help us, and move along. Okay. No, I didn't say that. I said, this far is not going to help you with the food in the oven. This far is not going to help you. Okay. Lemaisa, when it comes to gar fakatam, you get rid of the coals, you cover over the coals. There's really, what's the tam heter? Tam heter is l'chayra, has chadas, maybe it's a gilui das. Okay. In our world, I don't know how much, the nikuda, what nafkim, isn't Hesachadas. Maybe different Lashanis from Yishayim. Say maybe it's all called Zenichla. Maybe the only nafkamina really is going to be: are we going to get inventive in how we apply garfikatim? Meaning, could you go the good old fashioned, you have a sign that says Amanida, and you have a sign that says I'm Fleshix, and you have a sign now says it's Shabbos. The same shayla. Does that help? In the world, whenever we have a hacker, you need to have a hacker on the table. Does a sign work? And Basar B'chal, if you're eating at the same table with someone else.
If it's a hacker, then it needs to be constant.
Oh, good. That maybe it had to be a hacker b'shas. So let's get there. That's going to be the one case where it's a very, very big deal. Very big deal. Very big deal. So, also, what's a very big deal is how much do you need to have covered? How much you need to have covered. If the whole vart is a hecker, if the whole vart is, okay, you can play out the lumps however you want. So important to note, and this is very relevant when you start covering things with foil, because if we believe covering with foil is like throwing ash on top, so question is, does every inch have to have ash? Does every inch have to have foil? How much foil, let's just go into your crock pot and you're lining the inside, how much foil do you have to use? Aside from the shayla that we'll get to, thin foil, thick foil, whatever it is, but often, if you realize, the foil moves as you put in the thing, and not every inch of the metal plate, the heating element, is covered. So, is there a makayim? What is the story? So the Rishonim, they use the lashon that the eish shouldn't be nicker, and the question is, how far does that go? That's what the Ramban says. The Ran, that the eish shouldn't be nicker. So there are the Shevet Alevi and the quote from Eliashiv and others that even if there's cracks in the blech, meaning even though there are areas that you could see the quote-unquote eish underneath, they are willing to be makel. They're willing to be makel. Obviously, lechatchil, you want to cover everything, but it's definitely good. It's good to know that there is a makom to be makel, because anytime you're covering over things with foil, often things like that help. There's a gain in Shnei Eliyahu that says afilu al miksasa, is going to be fine to put down the ashes, v'chulu. But again, the lechatchila is you want to cover everything. Now the next question is, so what's the point of covering it? So we know it's hesach das. We know it's gili das. It's a hacker. But now, do you have to have it lessening the heat? So the Chazon Ish says yes. Shlomo Zalman says yes. L'maisa, the Shevet Levi that says no. What's the chiluk? The chiluk is going to be what type of foil you use. Now, one has to be mevayer the mitzias. They're all talking about thin foil doesn't work. It has to be thick foil. Go to Eretz Yisrael and see what their thin foil is. That's just step number one before you pass judgment. The Americans, they see that thin foil, they wonder, like, that's foil? Like what is that thing? It just similar to the cups and the plates that fall apart. Is the foil that just so you just have to be mavire the mitzias that they're saying that thin foil is not going to lower the heat. So I don't know if in our world the regular aluminum foil versus the heavy duty. I know Paiskim right that you need a heavy duty, you need thicker foil. I just don't know. You have to equate to what they were talking about, and very possibly the thin foil would be perfectly fine. And they say a couple layers of thin foil or heavy duty, it could be in our world we accomplish all of that. And void the art Paiskim Rav Chaim Scheinberg says any foil is fine. Lamashal, the Bear Moshe writes, Derech Niyar Kesef Hadak lehisarif acher kama shois v'ulai gam koitem sheyitbashel kamechel ben dirsai. Has anyone ever come back to their foil and been like, "Hey, where did he go?" It doesn't happen. So it doesn't happen. I think I answered the question very clearly. I think we answered the question clearly. No, I don't think you have to go on and buy heavy duty foil to no, I don't think so. You want to know it's a chumrah? Okay, it's chumrah. K'tan as it is in Nichlal and the expenses of Shabbos. Okay, right. Now, Stam, another interesting case is what if you can't raise the heat anymore? The heat's on the highest. Does that help? Does that help? There's no shemichata. So Ramesha says no. He says because well, this no, but here Ramesha's machmir. There he was makel, and Ramesha says the reason is because here maybe you're going to lower it and raise it. Here he does want to apply the lay plug, which is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That is exactly Grada. Listen, Yisladin, because Ramesha is taking both sides of the coins. I don't know, why not? Why not? It's two different first. Well, I don't know why you're saying they're telling you that. No, Ma'isa most are machmir here, so it doesn't up. Ma'isa most are machmir. This is Arlet Zion that says it's on the highest. It's Mekel, but and also I don't really know the relevance of the Shayla. I'm just pointing it out because what's the relevance of the Shayla? Yeah, okay. Covering the knobs. Here we go. $1 million Shayla covering the knobs. So new. Everyone says who's the Mekel? Who's the Mekel? Rav Aaron or Ramesha? Everyone quotes Ramesha as being Mekel. It's a tayis. Rav Aaron is a Mekel. Aaron is Mekel. But even Rav Aaron, you should see his lashon. I'll read you his lashon. Okay. Dibitanurin didon. Af. Did toiv. What does toiv mean? It's good. Shegam ha'ish yeh mechusa biblech. Ha'ikr hu bekisa kaftayr. So, ikr, toiv. Ubedi eved. Oy b'makom shekashe l'chasois ha'ish. Then so Rav Aaron certainly holds, based on what they quote him as holding. I actually tried to be mavir in the mishpacha. What they hold, I didn't get a clear answer. Anyone that has any Cutler context, feel free to do some research. I did. Wasn't so posh. Yeah, it wasn't so posh. But there are yeshivas that Scranton. There's mices in yeshivas that their mamish make like your Moshe, that if the knobs are covered, Rav Aaron, excuse me, thank you, like Rav Aaron, thank you, that the knobs are covered, it's beseder. But what's clear is even in Rav Aaron, the lechatchila is to cover the ish. That's the tayis that everyone makes. He says it now, whether people follow it or not. Meaning, you want to know, my crack plot. Oh, so I just cover the knob. No one says to just cover the knob because you could cover the ish. The only time he's saying to just cover the knob is when you can't cover the ish, is in your oven, then he's willing to be mekel on covering the knob. There's a chazinish in Maisa Ish, which that also is mekel. Fascinating. He says, klape Shehiyah, he's willing to be mekel. Okay. In the ovens cover the knob and you're fine. The knob. No, everything's the digital display. That's called. I didn't say you should cover that. I didn't say it. That's what he's saying. He is saying that there's two areas to deal with. Iker is the knob, the tuffle is the ish, and he's saying you should cover both. Can't cover the Aish, so he's saying then. So he's saying Rav Aaron is learning that one could be makel just by covering the knobs. That is what Rav Aaron is learning. We're going to get there. Good, we're going to get there. Yes, you're asking the question. That is the final question. Is tachlis, what do we do? Let's get there in a few minutes. Don't worry, we're going to get there. Ramesha says, Vadei zel levachi chasas esakavteirim, v'lo yiseish lo yoyel. It doesn't help. Sha'ikar, hu shetzarch lahari, shedaite lahavchas, shezen yir yisir kisir ish. So Ramesha is learning that covering the knobs by itself does not help, as does Rosh Hashanah Zalman, Rosh Chaim Pinchas, and all the Gedolei HaPaiskim hold that covering the knobs by itself is not going to help. Should you additionally cover the knobs? Maybe, but Lemaisa Rosh Hashanah Zalman says no. He says Ein lan al chadish gezeres ma'atzmeinu, and therefore you just cover the flame. V'chulu. The Ramesha that everyone quotes is that Ramesh says cover the knobs is Yoser Toiv Shakisu Yishalapach Hamit Hamis. I know you read the words that covers Yikase Gam Esakaftir. So Ramesh is learning it's better to also cover the knob. But again, the ikar is to cover. Everyone agrees the ikar is to cover the flame. Everyone agrees. A lot of even Rav Aaron holds the ikar is covered. Excuse me. Everyone holds you have to cover the flame. Let me say it better, not the ikar. Slicha. Rav Aaron holds you have to also. He says in Matzah that you can't. He's willing to be makel. But again, no one, unless someone has a direct Kabbalah, I don't think that this Rav Aaron is something that someone should be or could be relying upon on its own. Which svar? I mean, Rosham Zalman has a beautiful response. He says, the gezerah that was made has to do with the Eish, and that is Eish. So that's what let's do. Because there's a whole long shtickle in Mar Shav's Chelik Beis, page 628. He goes through the whole thing. But yeah, I understand your question. To answer the question properly, you really have to go deep into the gezerah of what is the Hesach Hadas, what is the gezerah Shem Yichata, and figure out, does it have to do with the knob and the flame, the pashtus, everyone, from the fact that all Gedolei HaPaiskim are taking on, that covering the knob is just a nice thing to do, but the etzim is the flame. It's clear they're all learning that the gezerah was made on the ish. That's the var. Now you're saying, why is that true in a chanam? You have to go back to the Rishonim and figure it out. Now, as was mentioned, this whole katma v'hovero business, which is very negeya, I think in come out everyone's household. Why is it negeya? It's negeya because when do you put on the blech? When do you put the foil inside the crackpot? So most people are saying, when? I don't know, it stays in there always. When do you take it out? You just leave the foil in, you just cook with it. So if you do that, first of all, stam, you have to ask yourself, does it work? But more than that, you're then playing with the heat after. It's like the whole thing sounds like counterintuitive. It's like a little shtickle ridiculous, right? You're doing gar v'katam, and then you're doing yechata, and then you're doing bishul. How does it work? Everyone agrees that it has to do with what's going on over here, in the world of lechatchila. But the point of the story is, in Katma of Hovara, Rosham Zalman spells it out in Shmir Shabbos Perik Aleph Ha'ara Samach Gimel, and again in Ha'ara Reish Yud Zayin, he says, if you are Hov'ira biyodayim, you undid the gar v'katam. So Rosham Zalman is learning, if you flamed it up, meaning if you played with the heat after you covered over the Eish, you undid your covering of the Eish. That's what Rosham Zalman writes. The mistaber the davkom kotma v'nislab sa Eish me'atzma choshev kikituma, but not avoloishu ivira biyadayim. So if you go Zakar Rosham Zalman, which is probably what everyone does, and leaves the thing in and then plays with the flame, says Rosham Zalman, it does not work. It does not work. And then Rav Yashiv in Sefer Ashi Ish, Mamish says, if you leave the silver in there, boif in kavua, it's no longer considered garuf vikatum. So the pashtus, what you should do lechatchila is, you take out the foil, you cook your cholent, you then lower it, and then put on the foil. You lower in, yes. You could ask the question out loud. You can ask the question aloud. No, the real answer is definitely when you're learning the sugya. Definitely when you're learning the sugya, you do this. But yeah, no, this is something that the only one, there's not, it's very difficult because there's really no mekilim. There's really no mekilim. That's why it's difficult that everyone's being mekel. Oh, yeah, Avada. Okay, say it. That just means your foil is pointless. Just realize. Okay. Chanami. What do you say? And then it won't help for chazar either. L'chayra. Correct. Unless yeah, that's not so simple. Maybe you could pay but other than that, okay.
Why? If that's not Garav Katan.
No, but everyone's going to say that you leave it in and you can never use it for again in your life.
So but again, there's got to be when it's a Shabbos like that.
You're letting me do it on Shabbos.
I know.
There, took it out.
You have to
lower it food and
We're lowered afterwards. Yeah, no, that l'chayra is fine. That's also l'chayra is the same issue. It means because you're showing that it's not really done. It's shver. I don't know what to tell you. This is of the shver's points in there, but you happen to be right. Klapid iser shehiyah. Your food is always cooked, or at least shlish b'shula, and you don't really have an issue. The only issue is end up going to be klape the iser of chazara. Grad that same shtickle from Rafelder. He wants to say that klape chazara, it's not a problem. That's what he wants. He wants to be machalik, like I think someone here was just saying. He says because lemaisa, which is we have to learn chazara. There, it's the mechsi kamavashal, and it's not going to be a mechsi if there is lemaisa foil sticking out of your crackpot. So, lav dafka is this quote unquote chumrah that we're now discussing going to hurt us across the board. And you are right that in the world of shehiyah, things are usually cooked. But just to know the emes how it's working is like this. Yes.
Some examine though, if you don't change the heat, then why? Then it doesn't. It's not cooking the chuvara, no. I mean,
If you don't change the heat, what do you do?
Meaning,
you leave it always on low and you just cook straight on low with it. Maybe. Interesting. Maybe.
Then it's the same thing.
I hear. Maybe. Now, just fascinating. Do you have to? Where is there some Zalman? Is in Shmir Shabbos Parak Aleph, Ha'ara Samach Gimel, and Reshit Zayin. Do you have to know why you're doing Katam? Do you have to know why you're doing Garva Katam? Do you have to know why? Anyone? Says there some Yashiv.
Makes sense that you do it.
Avalim Einu Yodeya Tivnesinas Hapach Ba'ol Lahatir Ashia V'Chazara Ella Yeniach Ella Meniach Hapach Kedei Litin Olah Kamba Kedei Reis. You think you know why you put the blach on? Because you can fit more pots on top of the stove, which take a poll, and many people think that. Shechamu Blavach Azai Loi Choshiv Katima.
Just do it because you know that that's what you do on Shabbos.
So he says, if you know that you're doing it to fix Shehiyah and Chazara, Shehiyah, Lahatir Shehiyah. Rav Yashiv is learning, you have to know this thing called Shehiyah.
If you don't know how Shabbos, you just know.
So that's what Rav Yashiv is saying it's a problem. Rav Yashiv is saying it's a problem. Yeah, Kiveger.
You're putting it on mutter, but you don't know why.
Maybe. Saying you don't know this thing called Shehiyah, you know there's something about Shabbos. Maybe. No, it's just a fascinating thing because if you ask a lot of people, they might not even know it has anything to do with Shabbos. They might think that it's just because, it's just easier to get all my food on top. Like, so, Avada. And why do you use a hot plate? Well, just how else am I going to keep my food into Shabbos? Rav Yashiv says it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Fascinating. Okay, let's wrap things up. So here is the bottom line is, so now we're back into we have the machlekes Machaber and Ramah. Machlekes Machaber and Ramah. If I were to ask you the following question, if your food is Meichel ben Jersai and you do Garif Vikatim, is that okay? What are you going to answer me? Again, it's Meichel ben Jersai and it's Garif Vikatim. Answer is yes. So if Kiva Eger is not sure. Beker adin to the Kosev Shulchan Aruch Siman Rishon and Gimel Sev Aleph B'Pshitas the Beloy Gia. What did I just say?
Oh, you're saying if it's
You did gar for Kotem, it's not Mechel Ben Yisrael. It's not Mechel Ben Yisrael. Slicha. So Rav Akiva Eiger there is not sure. Now, most people are going to answer, well, why not? Isn't that why you're doing gar for Kotem? Because you have an issue. Rav Akiva Eiger says, Einoi Barer, and he says, Sarach Ian Ladina. Fascinating is that the Sefer Piskei Teshuvos is chayshish for this Rav Akiva Eiger.
What's the svar?
Isn't that Isa?
Ayin Sham. It's a whole long shtickle of Rav Akiva Eiger. Ayin Sham. It's either on the Mechaber Sif Aleph or it's in Daf Lamed Vav Nun Beis, depending on if your Shulchan Aruchs have all the Rav Akiva Eigers. I have the quote over here. Anyways, I'm bringing this out as a marmakaim for those to look it up. And by the way, the Bir Halacha quotes is Rav Akiva Eiger, so you're all fired. Bir Halacha in Sif Aleph, Divri Maskal Ella quotes. Then you're double fired. The Bir Halacha, Divri the Bir Halacha, double fire means you're back in. The Bir Halacha, Divri Maskal Ella quotes this Bir Halacha. I'm inclusive Rav Akiva Eiger. Kasha dinza einai barer. So Bir Halacha seems to also be moved by this point, which is fascinating. Okay, so the $1 million question is, what do we do going into Shabbos? Tachlis, what do we do? Anyone? You want to keep food into Shabbos, so you have an oven. You want to keep your food in your oven. Are you allowed to keep your food in your oven? Now, we're putting on the side if your oven has a light in it, if your oven has a sensor in it. We're also putting on the side the whole shayla of opening the oven causes the oven to go on, doesn't cause the oven to go on. All of those shaylas, let's leave on the side. We're discussing, we have an oven, which is, let's say, Shabbos mode, or let's say whatever it is, and am I allowed to keep food cooking it into Shabbos? And so good. If it's raw, and obviously if it's not Michael Ben Dursai, without getting it to Kedei Chaisa, it's Aser. If it's Michael Ben Dursai, the Machaber is Machmir, the Ramah is Mekel. Gevaldik. However, we hold, even though the Ramah is Mekel, we are Machmir for the Machaber. What does that Chumrah, that Toiv of the Magen Avram, that Toiv of the Mishnah Brura, what does that look like? That's the question. Now, before we get to what the Toiv looks like, it is important to note that the Graz writes, Kfar Nispashet and Minig Lahakel, the Aruch HaShulchan writes that Anachnu Toivsin, that it's mutter, but then he says, Yisrael Kedoshim Heim, V'aisei Kol HaChumrah Shegarfen HaGachom Sad Echad. So what does this Chumrah look like? Now, there is a Chazon Ish in Siman Lamed Zayin Sivkot in Gimel that says, Anan Nihigim Lahakel. So the minog is to be mekel. But now you want to know, what is the chumrah? So the chumrah is that, what's the chumrah? The chumrah is like the mechaber. What does the mechaber hold? No, like the Rabbanon. What do the Rabbanon hold? This is really the $1 million question. So the Bir Halacha addresses our question. The Bir Halacha, Divrei Maskil V'noyagu, says, L'chatchila bevadai toiv li zoher she mevushal kol tzark mevushal kol tzarkei koydem chashecha, and then he adds in 3 words, ulisalkoi min ha'ish. What in the world does the Bir Halacha mean? At face value, his words mean the l'chatchila is it should be fully cooked and take it off the fire. I don't understand. If it's fully cooked, why am I taking it off the fire? Taking it off the fire, why doesn't it be fully cooked? Something here doesn't really make any sense. So the Chazon Ish is bothered by this Bir Halacha. He quotes Bir Halacha, and he says, "Near Zok the Chazon Ish." He doesn't say that. He ran out of ink that day. You're saying, he just loved Dafka. So the Chazon Ish didn't want to love Dafka of the Bir Halacha, and the Chazon Ish comes along and he says, "Near." Clearly, was bothered. To Rotzalemer, he meant Imum Mizam v'Yafalai. Good. That's what the Chazon Ish writes. That's what Chazon Ish writes. If this is accurate, then to keep kugel, a saucy meat, your soup, well, let's leave liquids out of this. in your oven isn't, you're not getting the chumrah of the bir halacha, which again, nunu lo nara, but you're not getting the chumrah. That's what it would seem if you read the bir halacha the way the Chazon Ish reads the bir halacha. However, there are those. Rav Shimon Eider has a nice diuk from the Mishnah Berurah again, which was on your Marmukema sheet in Simin Reish Nun Zayin Sivkotin Mem Dalid. Sivkotin Mem Dalid. The Mishnah Berurah there says Nispashel Kol Sarka. Let's read it together. This is a very important Mishnah Berurah. Again, Reish Nun Zayin Sivkotin Mem Dalid. Sivkotin Mem Dalid. Mishnah Berurah says. Sivkot and Mem Dalit. Does anyone see the Mishnah I'm talking about? Because I don't. This is the point. Oh, Buadin. Here it is. Excuse me. Av she'ino gar v'katim kiv she'naisa b'chaticha chaya lo chashin l'chitoi. V'hu adin im hi b'vushel es kol tzarkai. Di lavachi asim mishim shia. Kanal Rishna Gimel Sabalef. 1 second. That's not accurate. Salaf is b'vushel kol tzarkai. Has to be mistamik v'raloi. If it's just b'vushel kol tzarkai, the Bir Halacha just told me it doesn't work. But here, and there are those who like to bring rayas that when the Mishnah Berurah in other places, Klachar Yad says a line, that's what he holds me'ikr. It's a little bit hard because we're handling a chumrah over here, so I understand what the hesitation is. But that's what the Mishnah Berurah here writes. And there are those who say, Lamaisa, that's the minog. That's the minog. Over here, all he says is Mishkol Tarkoi. He doesn't mention that's Misavi Raloi. That's Machlok is Chanani and Rabban. Oh, no. Very good. The question is, how far are we taking on the Chumrah? In a Chanami. No, we're not arguing. Let me clarify. We're not arguing what the Rabbanan hold. That's for sure. You're absolutely correct. The question is, when the Bir Halacha, when the Mishnah Berurah say that we pass like Chananya, Aber Toiv Sarach Li Zair, it's a good thing to go like the Rabbanan. Do they mean to go all the way? So you're saying, of course they mean to go all the way. And that's how the Chazon Ish learned as well, as Rabbi Flam said, that what else does the Bir Halacha mean? That's what he means. He means Vishkol Tzarka. But there are those who want to say that it seems like for the Mishnah Berurah later on, that that's not true. That is clearly the minog to, as the Sefer Zachar V'Shamar writes as well. I don't remember, but Rafalk, who wrote Sefer Zachar V'Shamar, he says, when we asked him the Shayla, he said the Bir Halacha is Mekel. Bir Halacha is Mekel. Bir Halacha says, Mavushakol Tzarkai, and you take it off the flame. So he said, that's how the Chazon Ish learns the Bir Halacha. That's not. He learned the Bir Halacha differently. And I think, and this is the last, that he for sure said. That's Bavade. I think the way he learned it was, the Vav is in or, which both of them are drays in the Bir Halacha, so choose your poison. But the Vav is in or, that either it's Mavushkal Tzarkai, or you take it off the flame, which, okay, I'm not saying that's whatever, but that's how he learned, and he learned, Ina Chanami, the Chazon Ish doesn't hold this way in the Bir Halacha, that's the way the Bir Halacha reads, and he's only machmir, like the Chachamim, half of the way. That should be Mavushkal Tzarkai, and not that it has to also be mitzamik v'ra loy. Now, Lamaisa, and with this we conclude, based on what we quoted earlier from Rav Felder, l'chayra, there is a lot to play here in the world of a chumrah, right? What are we handling? Bad semitz mutter mekaradin. We're discussing, is there a chumrah that it should be what? Muzamik ver rally. Now maybe we could say on that level of chumrah, we're not sure how to read a Bir Halacha. We have a raya of Mishnah Berurah there. So on that level, we could say, maybe we can be mitzvah if all those svaros in our gas ovens, that it's not etzem stoking the flame, all those interesting chuvas of Ramesha, and that's what that Rav Felder was coming along and saying, that we can be mitzvah, and that's where the minhag ha'olam comes from, to keep food in an oven into Shabbos, and that's what many do. That's what many do, and l'chayra. That's Gilat. We're out of time. There's really just two things we didn't talk about. Is how do you I'll just say them in 90 seconds or less. How do you calculate Meichav Ben Dirsai? Is it from Shkia, Kabbalah Shabbos, or Tzeis? The Pasha says Shkia, the Chazon Ish says Yishmakom Lahakal from Tzeis B'Shas Adchak. How do you evaluate it? Is it the Zman Abishol? Says the Chazon Ish, yes. Comes along many Gedolei Apaiskim, and they say that's ridiculous. The Shevet Alevi Bereisham, so that's ridiculous. It's something that takes 2 hours to cook. After an hour, the thing is completely raw. It makes absolutely no sense. And he says it goes be'echos cooking. It means a third in the echos of the cooking. It's hard to evaluate it. That's what the Shevet Levi says. But it's very important to know that Chazon Ish because it's a very big kula in a time of need. And finally, Ramesha says, what do you do with water? What's water's mechel ben drasai? Ramesha says, it is, anyone? Yatsa ledis boy. So in our case, you plug in your thing right for Shabbos, you're in really not hot water. Where? Not hot water. Or David's not here. I could not hot water. But what I wanted to say is, are you really messed up? Maybe going back to the beginning of this year, this is going to be an appliance that there is no way to be mechatet. There is no settings. It's on or off. So maybe one could be makel like Yena Shevet Alevi, that if there is something that you can't be mechate, yesh makom b'diavad, obviously. Only b'diavad. And there's also Rav Elyashiv that says if it's a little bit warm, you could be makel. That tilts says. No, but even then, you fill up your thing all the way. It's other chazanish. So hey, good. But even still, it's still hot water takes time to boil. But yes, in a chanami, I agree with the cheshbon, and we didn't talk about Gdeir Chaisa, but we'll have to get there, Mitzvah Shem.